If you have not seen yesterday's video, you may want to go watch that one first, or not, entirely up to you. Time is a bit of a tricky beast, and everything you do is cumulative. That's why it can feel like some days are very productive, and like in others, you got nothing at all done. With anything we do, we have to decide what the best use of our time is. So some things have a bit more care applied to them, and with other things, we take shortcuts. But I would argue quite soundly that no effort is ever wasted. For as much or as little as you do, simply getting your ass out of bed every day is an accomplishment. But the unfortunate reality is that people around you have no earthly idea how much time you yourself put into the things that you do. They only see what is put directly in front of them. It is very easy for someone to assume, just as an example, that a video which is 10 minutes long took about 10 minutes to make. And it is because of these false equivalences that I felt the need to take time out of my schedule to make this video, how YouTube videos are made. For you see, process is all about the process. That is why it is called process. It is a series of steps that a creator gets into which allows them to get from conceptualization of any project to its conclusion in the most efficient manner. Let's talk about it. Every video begins with a core concept. For example, I run a mostly gaming channel. My core concept is I play games, but every game has a different or individualized interpretation of that core concept. Sometimes this is just playing through the story, sometimes it's coming up with a series of unique challenges outside of that story, sometimes it's something off the wall like my road trip talk videos where I drive around and talk about life, my thoughts, feelings, what have you. Kinda like we're doing now. Most people will keep a document of some kind with these ideas just to keep track of them and make sure they don't accidentally repeat an old project. This will come up throughout the process. After you've come up with your core concept, it's time to record. For me personally, this means recording the games that I play. If I'm doing a story mode, recording starts at new game, and recording ends at roll credits. Some games can be beaten in as little as a few hours, and some games will have to be played across multiple days. And you're recording everything. Not just the direct story elements, but all the grinding, all the extraneous busy work, all the loading screens, and so forth. And that's if you're just doing the story. Other projects might require recording additional footage. For example, my road trip talks are separate recording sessions of what is essentially B-roll. These sessions can take up to an hour or two long, trying different vehicles on different routes at different times of day, all to achieve different desired effects. Once you have your footage, the next step is storyboarding. You take the amount of footage you have in total, and you divide that by the number of episodes you plan to publish. For example, with the Crew Motorfest, I recorded around 15 playlists. Each playlist was 1 to 2 hours. If the shorter playlists can fill 1 episode each, and the longer ones can fill 2 episodes each, then I knew I'd have between 15 and 20 episodes planned. I also decided to sub in additional footage from elsewhere in the game, and I personally settled upon 18 episodes total. That was all added to the core concept document, obviously. The next step was to throw that footage into Premiere. For example, with each Motorfest episode, I would pull the relevant playlist footage, approximately 1 to 2 hours as mentioned previously, and figure out how the hell I was going to cut that footage to make a 10 to 15 minute episode. This meant cutting out all the extraneous driving between events, all the loading screens, any bad attempts at a race, and even parts of a good race where nothing really happens. Like if a race is 7 minutes, I might cut it down to 2 to 3 minutes, which means over half the footage is just left on the cutting room floor. And all of this cutting adds up from a time perspective. With any project I make, the cutting step alone can take 2 to 3 hours depending on the number of cuts. That said, there are games where you don't need to make nearly as many cuts or really any cuts at all. To my surprise, a game like Grid 2 really lent itself to showing each race event in full, which cut down significantly on the editing. But I still have to point out that I only used 40% of the total number of races that I recorded. The rest you guys will probably never see. Once the footage is fully cut and arranged, and I know the timestamps for every section of the video, the next two steps are sound direction and scripting, respectively. So sound direction is figuring out the musical choices for each episode. Songs tend to start at the beginning of a section and end at the end of that section. That is kind of a given. So if I know that a section is going to be, say, 2 minutes, 50 seconds, I'll go into the YouTube audio library and search all songs with a duration of around 2 minutes 50 or longer. I'll go through, figure out which song sounds good for the section, grab it, and throw it into Premiere. This step normally doesn't take too long, but there is a catch. I have a rule not to use the same song more than once across a series. For example, the song Heaven and Hell Part 2 by Jeremy Blake, it was used only once in The Crew 1, only once in NFS Payback, only once in Fallout Lonesome Road. You get the idea. So I keep a running spreadsheet of what songs are used and when. Another more implicit rule is to space these songs out across calendar weeks. So if a song plays in NFS Payback on week 3, that song should not play in Motorfest until, say, week 7 or later. And after the music is figured out, it is finally time to write that script. And I have more rules, practices, what have you, for how I script. I tend to play up a certain characterization in my videos, where I am part of the action taking place and impacted by the actions of the characters. As such, I respond to the dialogue of those characters in as authentic a manner as I can, and I make it a hard line to rarely, if ever, talk over another character. So there are many times where I will start saying something, stop myself because the character chimes in with their own commentary, and pick up my response immediately afterward. This all requires timestamping and some rehearsal. Again, this is more of a stylistic choice for me. I take the storyteller or show host perspective because I want my videos to be something akin to Top Gear or the Grand Tour or what have you. Alright, so once the script is written, it is time to record that audio. And honestly, it's about as easy or as hard as I choose to make it. For a 10-minute episode, I could have between 3 and 6 minutes of voiceover. For a road trip talk, however, the entire video is me talking, so yeah. After the audio is recorded, this needs to be edited. It starts with some noise isolation to remove breathing noise, then it's a matter of going through the audio track second by second to remove pops, hisses, any flubbing of my words, making loud parts quieter and quiet parts louder. Once this is all done, the final reamp step is carried out to fully normalize the volume, and then it's ready to export into Premiere. The final steps are to put everything into a little bow. The voiceover is synced according to its timestamps, the music volume is lowered so the voiceovers are more clear, labels are added to the overlay to show the game title, music titles, and so forth, and the whole thing can then be encoded. Once the video is fully encoded, I have to watch through it to make sure there are no quality issues. YouTube has a habit of ruining videos upon upload. Thankfully, that has not happened to me as often as it used to. So if everything does check out, then I make the thumbnail for that video, and the whole thing finally gets uploaded to YouTube for one final checkover. So let's review. Recording a game can take between 3 and 20 hours total before being split into individual episodes. Recording of any additional footage can be an additional 1 to 3 hours per additional episode on top of that. Storyboarding and then cutting that footage is a 2 to 3 hour session per episode. Sound direction adds another 30 minutes. Scripting adds another 30 minutes. Recording voiceover and then editing that voiceover can add another 2 hours easily. And finalization and thumbnail creation is upwards of another hour. There is a reason that people do not make videos every single day, and it's because doing so would literally kill them or drive them to complete insanity. So we need to discuss what wasn't talked about in yesterday's rant. When the video. One of YouTube's best features is the ability to upload a video as private and schedule it to go public at a later date. This allows for a seamless release pattern where videos go out at the same time on the same days of each week. For example, with my channel, Road Trip Talks usually come out every Tuesday, Motorfest videos are coming out every Wednesday, and Grid 2 is currently coming out every Thursday. And most viewers will be under the impression that these uploads are recent, that they're being released the same day they are recorded. And the answer is no. Just no. Not even close. The bulk of my Motorfest playlist footage was recorded in November, with the first episode releasing in February. Additional content for showcases, talking about summits, etc. was of course recorded as needed throughout December and January. Footage for Grid 2, meanwhile, was recorded in January and February, and is only now releasing in May. B-roll for Road Trip Talks tends to be recorded from week to week as needed. And more recently, I started recording NFS Rivals content for the series I plan to start airing in July. So while 3 mainline videos and 2 shorts go up every week, the truth is I'm creating content almost every day and staggering it by several weeks or even months to prevent missed days. And when I was working a job, albeit briefly, I could only put in a few hours each day before work to make videos, and I actually fell significantly behind. Without that buffer I'd planned in the weeks leading up to my job, I would have had to put my entire channel on hiatus. Again, all of this is mostly invisible to the average viewer, and at the behest of sounding like a broken record, I have to insist that a lot of this is because of streamers and how they run their content. When recording is your only step, you don't have to think long term. Your storyboarding process as a streamer is, this game should take X number of streams to record from start to finish. And then you do it. And then you upload the VOD. And then you move on to the next game or project or what have you. A streamer could easily go through 40 games in a single year. I'm lucky if I can go through 12. And that streamer is uploading all 20 hours of that game, including the not-so-fun sections, whereas I'm uploading maybe only 3 hours of that game once it's all been cut and divided into episodes. And yet, I'm called the lazy one, the uninspired one. For what? Using a PNG that was made by a computer program but still had to be edited by me? For not batting an eyelash when another creator expedites a thumbnail process because in the grand scheme of production, it really doesn't matter all too much? There is a serious cognitive dissonance, a tunnel vision by anyone who thinks that the videos they see are all one-and-done content. That is just not how this works. And no matter how many corners I may choose to cut, the amount of time for each video is still going to be longer than if I just hit record, talked bullshit for a few hours, and hit upload. And sometimes I do wonder if it's really worth it to create content at all.